Life after death. How to understand that a deceased loved one is near.
We long for the dearly departed. Sometimes they visit us. The presence effect is about this very phenomenon. When we feel that our loved one is near. But it is such a personal and subtle feeling that it is not easy to believe it. Many people have described their sensations. And those who are called clairvoyants have also described them. And there are also signs known from ancient times which indicate, a beloved soul has visited us. This is how children used to be visited in a pioneer camp, this is how adults are visited in a hospital. Or in a dungeon. It can be a smell. There is nothing to confuse the smell of a loved one. It is not necessarily an unearthly scent and fragrance. It is exactly the smell of a loved one. That's what my mother's shawl smelled like when I was a kid. Smell gives birth to enduring neural connections in our brains, so it can really serve as a medium for communicating with the world of the dead. It can be a familiar perfume, the scent of cigarettes, or the smell of the skin of a person who has passed away. Most often, people note the arrival of smells in the bedroom at the moment of falling asleep. In addition, if you meet people, from which comes the scent associated with a deceased loved one, it is a sure sign that he is near. That's what my grandmother smelled like when she cradled her. Or from a beloved man. Smell is hard to convey in words. But it is not to be confused with anything else. And this smell we feel as strongly as in childhood. But only for a moment. There is a song, music, very often. That song may be repeated from different sources throughout the day, even though it is not too popular. But it is with that song or music that our memories of the departed are connected. We listened to it together or he particularly loved it. I was once approached by a client. It had been about a year since her husband's death. The woman said that she and her children often hear the sound of her father's guitar, although it is always hanging on the wall after his death. This family was not bothered by such a circumstance, on the contrary, they were warm and touching to such a dialogue. They felt that their father and husband protects and loves them. But it happens that people are very frightened. Then you can lay the table, put delicious treats on it, light candles, from the heart to thank the deceased relative, and the whole family, for their care. And let go with a light heart. Also pay attention when your loved one's favorite music suddenly turns on, especially if you are in need of advice at that moment. It happens that the same song can be played throughout the day from different sources and in different places. There is a sense of peace and tenderness in your heart. Sometimes a tentative, timid, distrustful joy. One wants to call out to the deceased and ask, "Is that you?" Moving objects. People sometimes put things in one place and find them in another. As a rule, these are the items they used with the deceased: photos, papers, documents. They keep the energy of the deceased person. This is especially true of things that remind one of the beautiful days they spent together. A sense of presence. A slight sudden breeze in the room, with the windows and doors closed, creaking floorboards, knocking or rustling, all this can say that the deceased came in touch. Very sensitive people may even see a phantom of the deceased, to feel that they are being looked at. Birds. This is the oldest sign of the presence of the deceased. Birds were believed to visit the other world, conveying messages from there. Especially unusual birds, those you rarely see in the city, for example. A woodpecker, a bullfinch, an owl, not a common pigeon. If a pigeon, then an unusual coloring. It's as if an iconic word is italicized or bolded in the text so that we pay attention to it. Calls from unknown numbers, empty messages without words from unknown pages. These are already modern signs, but there is much evidence that through technical means of communication, the departed transmit information to loved ones. Power surges. This, too, is often noted, especially within 40 days of a person's death. Channels in the TV set are switched by themselves, the radio suddenly starts up, sockets click, light bulbs blink. All this is confirmation of the presence of the soul nearby. Symmetry of numbers. If you suddenly began to stumble on the same numbers, then it is worth unraveling a clue from the universe. For example, on the clock you always notice the time 11:11, you look up on the street and there is a plate with the same house number, you open a book, and also it is 11th or 111th page. Each number carries its own energy, and here it is worth referring to numerology, especially if these numbers coincide with the birthday of a deceased loved one. And a very strange sign, seashells. It was one psychic who wrote about shells, many have confirmed his words. And it doesn't matter that you live far from the sea, you will still see a seashell. Whether it's a real one or an image of one, it doesn't matter. But the departed send us signs through seashells. Maybe in the other world shells are like coins that pay for communication? You have to trust your feelings and your heart. And the love that didn't disappear when a loved one disappeared. If we continue to love, then there is someone we love. And he continues to love us and protect us.